Rabbi Yisrael Yitzchak Naiman, Rosh Yeshiva, Yeshiva Toras Chaim, Toras Hamas, will now lead us in Tehillim.
We'll start with Kapitel Chaf. Ramnatseach Mizmor David. Yancho Adonai b'yom Sorah. Yisagev Choshem Elohei Yaakov. Yishrach Ezracha Mikodesh. Umitzion Yisodeka. Yiskor Kol Minchosecha. Yorosecha Yedash Nosera. Yitain Lecha Kirvavecha. Lecha Asoscha Yimarei. Niranina Bishwasecha. Uveshem Eloheinu Nidgaho. Yimarei Amrikom Bishalosecha. Ato Yodati Ki Oshia Adonai Bishicho. Yaneu Mishmei Kodesho. Begivuros Yeisha Yemino. Ega Borechev. Ve'ega Basusim. Yanachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Nazkir. Ema Garu B'Nafahu. Va'anachnu Kamnu V'Nisodod. Adonai Hoshia. Amelech Yaneinu Yom Koreinu. Kuf Mem Beis. Maskir David. Biyoso B'Moros Sefira. Kogi El Adonai Ezok. Kogi El Adonai Eschanon. Eshboch Lefonav Sichi. Eizarasi Lefonav Agid. Bisateif Orai Ruchi. Yato Yodato Nesivasi. Biorach Zu Hareich Tamenu Fachi. Abeit Yomin Udei Ve'enri Makir. Ovad Monos Mimeni. Ein Doresh Nafshi. Zoakti Elecho Adonai Omarti Atom Machsi. Chelki B'Yeres HaChayim. Akshiva El Rinosi Kidarosi Mihod. Atzirei Rodofoi Yomisu Mimeni. Osiya Mimasker Nafshi Yodos Eshemecha. Birach Biachtiru Sarikim Kisig Mogoroi. Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael. Anesunim Batsara Ubashivya. Omdim Bein Bayom Ubein Bayhabosha. Amokom Yirachem Aleihem. Yotziem Mitzara Revacha. Umeafego Yoda Umishibu Gura. Ashta Bagalav Zman Koriv. V'nomar Amen. I'll say Mishaberach now. Feel free to insert your names as I pause. Mishaberach Avoseinu Avram Yisrael Yaakov Moshe Aaron David Shlomo Yapeh Sachogim. Chaim Yosef ben Edo Yaakov Yo Menashe ben Rochel Yo Yaakov ben Miriam Gittul Eser Freda Basti Inha. Bavur Shemei Shemespam Bavur Ham V'Schaz HaKadosh Baruch Hu Malach Malreihem L'Achrimam Uraposam L'Achzicham Achayosam Yishlach Lahem Mehira Refuah Shreimah Min HaShomayim L'Chol Evoreim L'Chol Gedem B'Sol Shol Yisrael Refuah HaNefesh U'Refuah HaGuf Ashta B'Agolav Zman Koriv V'Nomar Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Naiman. Thank you to everyone for joining us. If everyone could please turn off your video, it would help minimize the distractions. Thank you very much. We will now hear from Rabbi Avram Stuhlberger, Rosh Yeshiva of the Valley Torah High School.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It's an unusual Achenu Kobeis Yisrael. Achenu Kobeis Yisrael and a Sunim, Tzara V'Shivya, where it's literally Achenu Kobeis Yisrael. We normally have concerns for somebody someplace else, Jews in Eretz Yisrael, Jews in other countries, other places. Here it's literally Achenu Kobeis Yisrael. There are no places where there isn't this concern, there isn't this uneasiness, this longing for chizuk, this trying to understand. It's really a unique opportunity for an achdus of which we really haven't seen. In our lifetimes, we haven't seen such a time where the tzara is all pervasive. The challenge goes from one end of the earth to the other. And for those who have lost, Kamatat feels, she'ein bayis, she'ein shameis, for those who have lost, and so many have lost, all of us, I don't think there's come out hard to find a Jew who isn't somewhat connected to an incredible person who has passed away, is no longer here. We are truly devastated. The list grows, and we look at the list and we see the Kedoshim, we see the incredible Askonim, the Tzaddikim and Tzidkonios who HaKadosh Baruch Hu has taken during this time. And while we're longing for Chizuk, the truth of the matter is we need the Chum as well. The Chum is a consolation, is not easy. But maybe incredibly, when we look at the Parsha coming up, a Parsha that we're so anxiously hoping to lay in this coming Shabbos, Bez Hashem Yisborach. And we know that Nadav Avihu, these two incredible tzaddikim were taken by Kadosh Baruch Hu. Amazingly, the fire entered their nose and consumed their bodies. They were gone. And what happened? Vayidam Aaron, says the pasuk. Vayidam Aaron. Most people learn Vayidam Aaron when he found out that his two sons were taken, these two incredible tzaddikim, were taken by Kadosh Baruch Hu on the day of the consecration of the Mishkan. The day that should have been this incredible moment of glory, of ecstasy, of reaching the pinnacle spiritual heights of Klal Yisrael, where they once again could be restored into a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, forgetting about the Egel, putting the Egel in the past. And now this terrible tragedy hit Vayidam Aaron. Aaron was silent. Well, most Mefarshim learned that Aaron was silent because he composed himself and he kept it in. He did not want to sort of ruin the moment of the day, the joy of the day that Klal Yisrael had to feel. Says the Sefurna of Vayidam Aaron, not that he held it in. Vayidam Aaron shesnachem b'kiddush Hashem shenigdash b'moisa. Aaron's silence was not because he had to hold anything in. Aaron's silence was because he was consoled. He was consoled, as Rashi tells us, because he recognized, as Moshe Rabbeinu explained, Aaron's death, your son's death, was because of the fact that they were the holiest. And a Kiddush Hashem was caused by their death. As Rashi says, an incredible thing. What Kiddush Hashem? Tzaddikim get taken away, Tzidkonios get taken away. What's a Kiddush Hashem? The Kiddush Hashem is the response of all of us. We see these incredible people, these Rabbanim, these Gedolim, these Askanim, these people who live their lives for Chesed, who did incredible things throughout their lives. Kadosh Baruch Hu takes them, we all shudder. We all have a pachad in our hearts. But Kadosh Baruch Hu took them. Don't we have to do tshuva? Don't we have to wake up? And that feeling of awakening, that is iris that a person feels, if this what happens to tzaddikim, imkein be'elu, kolshkein b'rishoyim, kolshkein us, let's call us beinanim. Where do we come to these people? And if this is what happens to these holy people, these incredible men and women, these mothers of large families, these fathers of large families, if this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes, don't we have to shake ourselves up? Don't we have to be misor to do tshuva? Don't we have to make sure to do better? If we have those feelings, that is a Kiddush Hashem. The person did not die a regular death. That person died a death of Kiddush Hashem. And so powerful is that nechama to know that somebody died of Kiddush Hashem. Vayidam Aaron. Aaron is silent. He's okay. What do I have to be worried about? What do I have to be concerned about? My sons died up in Kiddush Hashem. There's no greater place waiting for them in the Olam Amidst. So we can feel this way. Reminds me an incredible story I heard from our Rebbe Zatzal. the yeshiva of the yeshiva Chavetz Chaim, and he would say, remember hearing from his father, sort of struck me, and as the older I get, the more incredible that story is to me, where he said, I remember his father telling him, Reb David Leibowitz Atzal, the great Rosh Yeshiva, the great Goyin, the great Gadol Hadar, one of the Gedolei Elyoy of the previous generation. And he said that when he was running away from the Russians, some partisans in the forest, and one of them actually took a shot at him. And he said that the Yeshiva told us the story that his father told him that it grazed his jacket. It almost killed him. It almost hit him. And he said to the Yeshiva, Penach Leibowitz, he said to his son, he said, you should know, I've thought many times, I wish it would have hit me. I wish the bullet would have gotten me. I wish I would have been shot by that partisan and died right there. And it's a hard story to fathom. Reb David Leibowitz, this is in his younger years. Reb David Leibowitz, who was the Talmidim that he was going to have, that he knew he was going to have, that he recognized who he was, and he had them already. And the yeshiva that he started, that ultimately was able to, continues to accomplish so much. You wish you would have died. You wish the partisan would have hit you and shot you. And the message for us is so profound. Again, you have to certainly be on that level, but to appreciate what it is. What are we living for, Rabbi Isai? What are we living for? We're living to be able to, as the Mesilas Yesharim so fundamentally tells us, to be able to earn eternity. What better way of earning eternity than to be dying al pi kiddush Hashem? David had that clarity. He wasn't from 1,000 years ago, but he had that clarity that no matter what we do in this world, to be able to be in that unique classification of dying al pi kiddush Hashem is something that was able to bring complete nechama to Aaron. But he didn't have to say anything. He didn't have to. The emotions were calmed, because if you bring a kiddush Hashem into the world, if you're death, when the person dies because he's a Jew and he was shot by a partisan, then that would have been his dying up Kiddush Hashem. That's what a lifetime is about. That's what we long for, and ultimately in terms of the lives that we have, our lives should be Kiddush Hashem. Not everyone's zocheh to die be Kiddush Hashem. That's why all of these victims, all of these people who HaKadosh Baruch Hu took in this virus, the virus is a pachad. The virus is something that wakes us all up. If a person dies, it's always sad when a person dies. A person dies in an ICU with a heart attack. Okay, we kvetch and we're sad. The family, of course, is heartbroken. But everyone on that list is a pachad. Every time we see another person, Rahman al-Itzlan, we wake up, we shudder and we shake. Another person. It awakens all of us to this. It's not a routine event. It becomes dying al pi kiddush Hashem. It puts these special people in a unique place, unique position. And certainly it should be for those, all of us. I found out last night, my first cousin passed away over Yontif, 10 days before he lost his wife. The tsar is all permeating. But if we understand that when a person gets taken, and it should be the end, we shouldn't know from any more. We shouldn't hear any more on that list. But to give us the nechama to understand that this is al pi kiddush Hashem, because it wakes us up, it stirs us, it makes us clear, it gives us a sense of clarity that we have to change, we have to improve, and there's so much has been said, so much will continue to be said about the ways we can improve and the tikkunim we can make, and they're all wonderful ideas. And ultimately, everyone will have to find that position in their own hearts of what they have to do. But the fact that we're Seiver, im came be'elu kolshkein, b'rishoyim kolshkein be'beinim kolshkein with all of us. If we can have that feeling that we're stirred to action, what a tremendous chus it is for these kedoshim utahirim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has taken during this incredible magefa, incredible horrific magefa. And the fact that we're stirring, the fact that we're frightened, the fact that we're somewhat uneasy, it shouldn't concern us. It's normal. It's how we emerge. It's how we ultimately walk out of this situation every single day, how we go through that day, and how we go through with our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Incredibly, in the Chavos HaVavos talks about in Chasidus, this is chapter 19 of the Mesilas Yesharim talks about in chapter 19, in the aspects of Chasidus. And this is a person, a chassid. He talks about a person on the loftiest level. We're talking about somebody who's worked a lifetime to reach madregas levels that are hard to imagine. And he talks about Ava, that this chassid, in order to really be a chassid, in order to reach saintliness of the stature, what the Mesilas Yesharim is talking about, a person has to work a lifetime. And his love is not even a love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's even dependent upon anything. It's not a love that came about because the person received so much from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is a fundamental element of Hasidus, is a love that's unconditional. I love HaKadosh Baruch Hu because he's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He made this world. He's great. He's just overwhelming. His kindness, his love, his concern. And it's just awesome, overall awesome essence is causing me to love him. It's not even love which is dependent. It's more like he says a love of a son to a father. And he says, if you want to know what can challenge this love, it's difficulties. Difficulties. And he says, Omnam kedei shelo tiyena hatzaros v'atchakim koshi u'meniya elahava. In order for difficulties, pressures, challenges, not to become an impediment to this love, to this chasidus, to this level of being a chassid, let me give you one of two bits of advice. Let me give you two strategies how to handle the situation. How to handle the situation. I'm a chassid. I work so hard. All of the chapters that led up to this is chapter 19. Perek Yotes, this is not the beginning of the Sefer. I am a person who has achieved so much. I've done Nikius, Precious. There's so much I've been able to accomplish. And I say every day, I mean it with the depths of my heart. And now the Mesilas Yesharim has to give us advice of when things get rough, when you have a challenge, when things are difficult. Let me give you some advice. Let me tell you how to deal with it. Apparently, the Mesilas Yesharim recognizes it's almost by definition, when things are smooth, when you've had consistent years of no challenges, nothing significant, nothing earth-shattering, nothing where you don't know, you can't see, you can't feel it, when the whole world is sort of hunkered down in their own homes, when from one end of the earth to the other, there's a magefa that's taking the holiest and the best. When that happens, you can be a chassid. But you need to hold on to strategies. You need to hold on to a sense of chizuk. There's nothing wrong. Don't feel bad. The fact that there's a level of angst, there's a level of concern, doesn't mean that we're weak. Doesn't mean that we don't have be talking about Kodesh Baruch Hu. It just means that we're sort of discombobulated. We're torn away from our typical situation, something we've never seen before. But we have to remember, the Mesilas Yesharim says, yes, you will be challenged. You can even be a chassid. And certainly for us, as much as we work on ourselves and we want to strive, we're not on that level. But we have to know we have to reach into ourselves and meet that challenge with all the angst and all the concern and all the uneasiness and all the uncertainty and all the tragedy and all the tsaris. We need to know that, yes, it's not a sign of our weakness. It's a sign of the fact that we have to resolve ourselves to reach deep into ourselves. And to remember what the Mesilas Yesharim tells us. To remember for the general population, he says, the first strategy is HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. We don't know exactly, of course, the where and the whys and what's going on. We don't know the cheshbonos. Is this ikvis of the Mashiach? Is it punishment? Is it a chance for us to elevate ourselves in a level of concern and hishtadfus and concern and share in the pain of our fellow Jews? Is it a chance for us to feel the actus in a way we've never felt before, not for 70 years in Klal Yisrael? We're all feeling it in the same way, this connection that we feel, this unmistakable connection that we're all in this together. It could be all or nothing. We don't know HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chesed. But one thing's for sure, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. He will never forsake us. He never has forsaken us. We have the ability to draw deep into ourselves and to recognize that this is a test from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in terms of us recognizing that this is a chance for us to gird ourselves. And that's why, in a sense, it brings the second strategy. Strategy number one, says the Mishloach Sharm, one that we can all relate to, is that sense. It's all for us. It's all for our good. It's all the time. And the other one is, even in a higher level, he says, for more sophisticated Jews, he says, it's that ability for a Jew to say, I have a chance to show my love that much greater. If I can love HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the challenges, through the difficulties, wow, what an opportunity to solidify the deep relationship that I have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that even through challenges I can love him. Even through challenges I can show him how undaunted I am by my surroundings. These are incredible opportunities. We can learn from people who didn't live such a long time ago. There's an incredible book written by our dear Chaver, Baruch Cohen, called Grieving and Healing. And in that book, he mentions a story about the Klosenberger Rebbe. But it's interesting about it. It's about a fellow who wanted to get married in Eretz Yisrael. Fellow wasn't religious at the time. The process of getting, I'm reading from the book, the process of getting this license involves verifying details about one's yichus. So you have to prove you're Jewish. A gentleman who was not from showed up at the Beis Din and started to inquire if he's Jewish. His response was, of course I'm Jewish. The Beis Din asked whether he could tell them a pasuk in our Holy Torah. That's one of the questions they would ask. If you're Jewish, you should be able to know one pasuk, and typically the answer is, many of the Jews who didn't have the chance to learn, they would say Shema Yisrael, some very, very well-known pasuk. The pasuk he recited incredibly to prove that he's Jewish, to answer this Beis Din in Yerushalayim, was Tachas eshelo varatos Hashem Elokecha b'simcha v'tov levav. Amazingly, he answered the pasuk in Kisavo. The pasuk he quoted was, why did all the tzaras before Klal Yisrael? Because he didn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with joy. I continue reading, astounded by the unusual response. They asked how he knew that pasuk, to which he answered, where do you know this pasuk from? So he answers, my mother was a Holocaust survivor. And while working in the kitchen, she constantly hummed a tune with the aforementioned pasuk. She said the tune was engraved in her mind and on her heart by the Klosenberger Rebbe. She used to watch him in the camp sing this all day and all night. The recognition that there are people not so far ago, not living such a long time ago, who literally had these words, the need to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to rejoice in that relationship, to see the horrors, to see a world that we can't even imagine with all of what we're facing now. It still cannot relate. We don't want to compare, but it cannot relate to what the Klosenberger Rebbe and so many Jews during those horrific years of World War II. And he sang every day to the point where the lady in the kitchen heard the words, knew the words by heart, gives it over to her son, and he quotes it to a Beis Din in Yerushalayim. Incredible. This is what we have to strive for. This is the relationship we have to feel. That despite the challenges, despite the trepidation, despite the fact that, yes, there's so much tsar that so many of us are feeling, so much loss, the loss, the nechama of knowing that these are Kedoshe Elyon who died al pi Kiddush Hashem, taken by a Megefa that literally has woken us all up. And every single time we feel that assurance, every single time we are shaken to move ourselves to a higher level, that just solidifies the Kiddush Hashem of what these people gave their lives for. And as we are awaiting an end, to have this feeling of the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the unabiding love, the love that has never left. I'll end with Another incredible story, even words from the great Rosh Yeshiva of Shachs. We know that when his daughter was 14 years old, he lost his daughter. And it was incredible that he was a man who led Klal Yisrael for almost a half a century. And he was so moved to the point that he was once Menachem Avel. Rav Michael Feinstein, he was once Menachem Avel because Rav Michael Feinstein lost his daughter. And Rav Shach went to Menachem Avel. He sat there for a long time, but after he left, somebody pointed out that Rav Shach lost his daughter too. And Rav Michael didn't know. He was shocked. If he lost his daughter, he's come to Menachem Avel. Why didn't he mention that he lost his daughter? And someone asked him, and he said, I couldn't mention. If I mentioned, I'd break down. 40 years after he lost his daughter, he would still break down. The tsar that he felt, the many times that he had to go back home to comfort his wife in the middle of Shir because of the tsar that she felt because they lost a daughter when she was 14 years old. Many, many years later, the pain was still there. And incredibly, despite the pain that he felt for that terrible, terrible tragedy, the pain that he felt throughout his life, and I read his words to you. Towards the end of his life, Rav Shach said, if I were to write down all the troubles I had in my life, it would be a book longer than all the volumes of Avi Ezri, his classic work. For I never had a good day in my life. I had no portion in this world. But nevertheless, from my childhood to this day, I consider myself the most fortunate person in the world. My friends made rich shidduchim, and they weren't happy. But I, the poor soul who never had a thing in this world, was the happiest of all. It was the moment in my life that I wasn't in a state of joy. And why? Because I learned Torah. There's no contradiction between deep pain, suffering, uneasiness, but yet a deep joy in the heart of a Jew. Didn't say because I was the leader of Klal Yisrael. He didn't say because he gave shurim to hundreds of Talmidim over the years, thousands over the years. Didn't say because he's a Rosh Yeshiva of one of the most illustrious yeshivas in the world. Because I learned Torah. Rabbi said, we all learn Torah. We are the Amad Torah. We're part of the Amad Torah. We have this schus, whether we learned, whether we're teaching, or whether we're people who find the time every single day to learn Torah, we learn Torah. We have to have this sense, this unique sense, we're Klal Yisrael. We're the Amad Torah. No matter what pain we feel, the unspeakable depths of shock and anguish that we feel, what has to permeate us at the very same time is this unabiding, deep connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He loves us. He has always loved us. And his love will get us through this challenge as it has gotten through us through the previous many, many challenges throughout this long, difficult Golus. As Hashem Yisbarach, if we take these incredible people to heart, the level that they were able to achieve, recognized in a chama that we have to feel, and the ability for us to Mekadesh Shem Shemaim through the petira of all these Kedoshim Utahirim, by us resolving to be better, by us resolving to make that Kal V'chomer. If that's who gets taken, then what about us? How much more we have to be ready to answer the call. As Hashem will be in a chama for the families, it'll be a schus for us. The Magefa should end very quickly. We should only have simchas and nachas in the future, Bez Hashem. We look forward to the time when we can reconnect, not dafka on Zoom, but we can reconnect physically in the shuls, in the Bati Madrashos, the Bati Knessos, and Bez Hashem Bizocha, to the end of all suffering and be a Mashiach Mevi. It's not my great honor to thank the next speaker for really organizing this evening and to really have the schus of introducing a dear chaver, Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva Torres Chaim in Miami, Rabbi Binyamin Luben.
Thank you. There is a sefer, Tzaddik Rabbi Yosef Zundo Misawad. Rabbi Yosef Zundo was the Talmud, one of the Talmidim Rav Chaim Volozhin. And the Rebbe we know of the Rav Yisrael Salanter. And he quotes in his Sefer from Rav Chaim Volozhin, we know there's a concept that one is supposed to accept Yisurim Da'ava. So simple pshat would mean that your simcha should be so great to the point that because of your great simcha, you don't even feel you have Yisurim. But we find in Tehillim that David refers to Yisurim as a stick that's being hit. Shiftecha, your shaft, your stick. The Mulkach, we see from there, Sheyargish Shehu Shevet. Your person is obligated to recognize, to feel the pain. Rakhemi Nachamuni. And only afterwards do you feel the Nachama. So Rav Zundel says that there's a special chiyuv in order to have, when one gets Yisurim, is one has to recognize it. One has to feel it. One can't just brush it off and say, Gamzu de Toiva. Obviously, you're supposed to say Gamzu de Toiva, but you're supposed to say Gamzu de Toiva with a crest, with the realization that Yisurim. Other people say the same thing. There's a Sefer, Pinyon of Agarda from the Torah Zev, who says it perhaps more in Yoni Diyoma Pesach. He quotes the Rebbe that Bala Marer Lo Yatsa. A person is a mitzvah to eat marer. What if you eat it without tasting it? You eat it like you swallow a pill. You're not yotzi. The mitzvah is you got to taste it. You have to taste the marer. Person has to feel the Yisurim. That's part of the mitzvah of the Yisurim is you have to feel it. The problem by us sometimes is not that we don't feel the Yisurim because we're on the Madrega of Yisameach Yisurim, but we don't feel the Yisurim in the sense that we feel that it's just part of nature. Okay. It's obviously we feel the pain, but we don't connect it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's an amazing Rashi in Breishis, Parshas Noach. It's really a Medrash Rabbah. That we know the Dor HaFlaga came after the Dor HaMabel. And they did apparently some serious Aveira. It's not clear in the Torah what their Aveira was. So the question is, how is it that they did, what did they do, and how did they do it after the Mabel? They should have seen the Mabel. So Rashi brings, and the Medrash says, Amru, they said, Elef if Taf Reish Nun Vav, every 1,656 years, Harakia Mismaitet, Bo Venasas Muchas. They said the Mabel, that's a law of nature. You know, the water accumulates, the sky, there's a heaven, there's a wall, a dam. Takes after 1,500, 600 years, the water accumulates, and then the dam busts, it's too much pressure, and it all comes down. And then, okay, now that the dam, the pressure is relieved. In other words, there was 1,600 years from Brias Ha'olam till the Mabel. So they said, apparently that's how much time it takes for the water to accumulate, the water pressure, for the dam to bust. In another 1,600 years, it's going to happen again. It's a law of nature. And therefore, they built the Migdal to stop. That was, they were preparing in order to hold up the Shammai and that the dam shouldn't bust again. Such an amazing thing. It's such a clear Nes Nigla, the Mabel. Noach was being Misnaveh for 120 years that there was going to be a Mabel. He has a Nevuah. He told the people. Noach was a tzaddik. Only he was saved. The Teva was such a Nes Nigla. Everything was Nisim Galuyim. And the people were able to rationalize it with science. Oh, it's just an event. It's a scientific event. That's what happens in the world. It's a law of nature. Every 1,600 years, as it to be expected. How many people say every 100 years we get a virus? Yeah, that's the way it is in the world. There's epidemics, and then it goes away. It's a law of nature. This is the problem that we have. The problem that we have is that we go ahead and obviously we feel the pain, but we don't connect the dots. We don't go ahead and connect the pain to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Yefei Tohar and the Medrash says that the Medrash is not only explaining how the Dora Aflaga forgot about the Mabel, but it's really also trying to explain what the Aveira the Dora Aflaga was. The Yefei Tohar says this in itself was the main Aveira. They didn't do anything wrong, but just the fact that they were ready to go ahead and instead of realizing that Etz Min HaShamayim, there's a din v'cheshbon, there's a cheshbon in the world, there's a Kodesh Baruch Hu, there's a schar v'onesh, there's a judgment, there's a reason, there's a hashgacha pratis. Instead, they went ahead and said things are just laws of nature. That itself was the aveira for which they were chayiv to be punished, because that itself is such a terrible aveira. To go ahead and just to think, that's how it is. That's the way it is in life. There's a Gemara in Yavamis, a well-known Gemara, Tzamach Gimel and Aleph. I'm Rav Ozer Rav Avina. Ein Paranias Ba'ad Ha'olam Ela B'Shvil Yisrael. There is no Paranias that comes to the world except to awaken Klai to the Tshuva. They say that when the tsunami came in Japan, it was basically Goyim that were killed. So you say, okay, what does that have to do with us? It was just them. So the Gedolim applied this chazal. That Sarah was for us, to awaken us. We were obligated to hear that Sarah was to awaken Klai Yisrael. Surely this Sarah, which affects Klai Yisrael directly, we have to feel that the purpose is B'Shvil Yisrael. And it's there, the purpose is to motivate us, to inspire us, to go ahead and to make a cheshbon hanefesh. So obviously, the first step we have to do is to come at least to the recognition that this is Yad Hashem. Not just to say this is nature, not just to say that everything will go back soon, okay, in a few months, everything will come back to net normal, don't be nothing to be concerned about. We have to go ahead and realize that it's Yad Hashem. As Hashem, everything should go back, but only because Hashem decides to go back. Chesed Hashem. And we have to be motivated to go ahead and use it as an inspiration to reach higher levels. The most obvious thing, of course, everyone says, we have to do tshuva. There are so many things we need to do tshuva on. Everyone has their own averis they know about. So many things we don't do right. Each person knows himself. Person has to be motivated for tshuva. But I want to say something different, not because that tshuva is not the ikr, but that tshuva is very hard. And sometimes it's because most people don't do averis on purpose. They do averis, speak lashon hara by accident. So it's very hard to stop because you don't know when you're speaking lashon hara. Obviously, we're obligated, but it's hard. Sometimes we have to find also something easier that we can do, that we can do it right away. So there is a famous Rav Itzel of Peterburg. Rav Itzel, the Talmud of Yisrael Salanter, asked the question that why is it that on Yom Saras and Tshuva, Chazal and the Rambam emphasize that the ikr and the basic thing is tshuva. Why can't we do a different way? There's a Gemara in Kedushin that says that asa mitzvah achas. So your echriya, it's atzma v'skoholam mekav schus. There's a different way to save the world, not necessarily through doing tshuva. Tshuva removes the averis, but you can also do more mitzvahs. Doing more mitzvahs also, in a way, changes the balance. You say that on Rosh Hashanah, the Yom Din, there's a scale. Hashem weighs the mitzvahs and averis. So logically, there are two ways. You can go ahead and do tshuva to remove the averis, or you can do mitzvahs to add mitzvahs. So Rav Itzela asked the Gasha, why is the focus on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur always mainly only come out on tshuva and not on doing more mitzvahs? And he gives an answer. And Pashtus, his answer only applies for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Pashtus. Which would mean that in this situation, we really have two avenues. We have the avenue of tshuva, which is probably the main avenue. But we also have the avenue of Rav Itzela, which is a much easier approach. That to go ahead and to do extra mitzvahs. To do mitzvahs with extra perfection. There is a story I heard from Rav Brevda Zatzal. Rav Brevda, obviously this is not it's a mashal. I don't think there was a way he could have known this story. But he told this story. He said that there was a Jew from Yerushalayim who was nifter, and he comes up to Shamayim, and he sees they have this giant book of all his mitzvahs. So he's curious. He starts flipping the pages, and he sees it's written that he saved the life of some woman in Los Angeles. She had some medical crisis, very, very difficult medical situation, and he saves her life. So he looks at this, he calls a malach over, and he says, there's a mistake here in this book. I never did that. And the malach says, no mistakes. He says, but it can't be. I never was in Los Angeles, and I don't know anything about medicine. And the malach told him, when this woman was in that difficult medical situation, you did a mitzvah. Your mitzvah saved her life. Your mitzvah saved her life. You get credited for saving her. This is the koyach of a mitzvah. A mitzvah can save someone's life. Regretfully, we don't feel it because we're not machshav the koyach of a mitzvah. And perhaps we think, okay, maybe a tzaddik's mitzvah, maybe the Stipler's mitzvahs, but not my mitzvah. My mitzvahs, so precious. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Altia mitzvah kala beinecha. It shouldn't be a small mitzvah. You shouldn't be mitzvah kala b'kachamura. I'm sorry, quoted. That you should be machshav a small mitzvah like a big mitzvah. Which means that even a small mitzvah, you should be machshav. So Rav Chaim Volozhin in the Ruach Chaim says, what does it mean, a small mitzvah? It means a mitzvah that's done improperly. A mitzvah that's done shalom lishma. He says, even a mitzvah that's done shalom lishma is ein ati yodea matan schar shal mitzvahs, means it's humanly impossible to comprehend the value of that mitzvah. It's ayin lo rasa. Ein ati yodea. You can't comprehend it. You might have done the mitzvah in a crummy job. You did it shalom lishma. But it's still an amazing thing. Still is an amazing kayach. And surely, if you did it lishma, there's a gra in the beginning of Bamidbar. He says, there's a pasuk that says, Yikari miptinim, that Torah and mitzvahs are compared to gems. So the gra says, why? What is a mashal? Why are they comparing Torah to gems, mitzvahs to gems? And he says, by a gem is an amazing thing. You have a diamond, it's worth $1,000. Now you want to know what diamond is going to be worth $10,000. So you think it has to be 10 times greater, 10 times larger. Says it's not true. If it's a drop bigger, it already can become 10 times greater in value. Because once it goes beyond the norm, most diamonds are a certain size, a carat, whatever. That's normal. So there's a certain price. Also expensive. Diamonds are not cheap. But it's normal, so it has a certain price. Once it goes beyond the norm, you win the Olympics by a split second, but you're beyond the norm, then your value goes up 10 times. He said the same thing with mitzvahs. If you do a mitzvah a little bit better than most people do mitzvahs, you do it a little extra kavanah, Most people don't have that kavana, and you do it with a little extra kavana. Then your mitzvah is multiplied 10 times. So if the Chaim Volozhin says that by Mizor mitzvah kala kachamura she'enat yadei matan schar b'mitzvahs, we don't appreciate the schar of a simple mitzvah that's done shalom lishma. Surely a mitzvah that we do perhaps better than the shema, better than the average shema, a little extra feeling. Imagine what that mitzvah is. Imagine what that mitzvah can accomplish. And even if the person is a Rasha, we say even a Rasha's mitzvah is amazing. There's a pasuk in the Reshiva that's out, the Shmuz, that we have that Lovin. We have this in the Haggadah. Arami Oved Avi. When was Arami Oved Avi? At the end of the parsha, when Lovin was chasing after Yaakov, and right after he finished chasing him, he went ahead, goes ahead, and the parsha ends by Lovin gives Yaakov a bracha. And the Sipurna says, why does the Torah tell us Lovin's bracha? Because Lovin got inspired, and he said it with kavana, and a bracha with kavana has power. It's so important that it's written in the Torah for Dairis, because this bracha was said with kavana. I is a Rasha, doesn't make a difference. Even a Rasha's bracha, that's what the Sipurna says. When he does it with the right kavanas, it has tremendous, tremendous kayach. So we have to declare that our mitzvahs are a tremendous kayach. There's a tremendous, tremendous force that we have to do a mitzvah. And every mitzvah, one mitzvah, person can do one mitzvah, the Gemara Kedushin says, Kimachriya kol olam the kafschos. And therefore, obviously, say, size tshuva. But this is an easier approach, because tshuva, you have to catch the moment when you're about to speak Lashon Hara. Very often you don't know, you don't catch it, but then you have to catch it and say, no, I'm not going to speak it. But here, any moment, you can say, you know what? Right now, there are so many chaylim, so many people in need. I want to give them a schus. Okay, I'm about to daven Mariv. I didn't daven Mariv yet. I'm going to say Kriya Shema, Mitzvah Deraisa. I'm going to say Shemona Esrei. How many times do I say Shemona Esrei? I'm not Yaitse because I don't say Avis with Kavana. I don't say Kriya Shema, the first bracha, first pasuk with Kavana. I'm going to say Sfiras HaOmer. It's a mitzvah. I'm going to make a bracha before Sfiras HaOmer. It's another mitzvah. I'm going to eat an apple. It's a mitzvah. Bari Priya Eitz. Person has so many mitzvahs we do. Let's stop a minute before we do the mitzvah. And let's think. There are so many chaylim, so many people in need. The world is omed in a balance. We can be machriya the olam the kavschus. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this bracha properly. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that my hands are clean. I'm going to go ahead. If it's davening, I'm going to wear a hat and jacket, a bench. I'm going to bench him a sitter. I'm going to have the kavana. I'm going to think about what the words mean. Baruch Atah Hashem. I'm going to think what the words mean. One pasuk I can handle. I have kavana for the bracha. Instead of rattling it off and I'll know what I'm saying. And that mitzvah, who knows what kayach that one mitzvah can have? Ezra is Hashem. If we could do that, what we could do is, first of all, we could go ahead and recognize that everything is biyad Hashem. That itself is a tremendous schus of realizing that having the recognition, the emunah itself is a tremendous schus. So realizing that everything that's happening is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the first step, to go ahead and to hear that it's from Hashem. The second step is obviously to think if we can do tshuva. Tshuva always is an ikr. We can go ahead. If we can stop speaking Lashon Hara, if we could stop doing Averis, if we could have more diktuk adin, more care, not being to be careful of muktzah on Shabbos, whatever, everything that we perhaps we're careless. We could do things without realizing it. But then perhaps a much easier thing, at least when we make brachas, we do so many mitzvahs all day. So let's stop a second before we do a mitzvah. And let's stop to think that this mitzvah is such a kayach. This mitzvah can be mirapa cholim. This mitzvah can be machriya the kol olam the kav schus. And I'm going to do this mitzvah right. I'm going to do this mitzvah beyond. It should be just a mitzvah kala. It's going to be a mitzvah that's done with the right kavanas. And then it can be just 1 minute, 30 seconds. How long does it take to make a bracha? But when you do that mitzvah, when we do it with the right kavanas, then Be'ezras Hashem, that itself will be able to machriya the ilam the kafschus. And I'm sure what would happen is Achamei ve'esrim will come up to Shemayim and they'll show us in our book how many people's lives we saved because of the mitzvahs that we were able to perform. It's now my pleasure to call on the last speaker, Shai Cohn. Shai Cohn is really someone who is an older, just almost a Rebbe of mine. He was Makari me very much when I first came to yeshiva and had a tremendous hashpah on me, someone that I know we all respect tremendously, and I personally have a great deal of hakaras hatov, and I'm sure he will have very inspiring words for us.
Thank you, Rabbi Luban. It's difficult to speak with everything that's going on, and really so much has been said already. Rabbi Stuhlberger so eloquently and painfully expressed the tsar that we have and we should have for the great losses that have taken place and the appropriate response to such losses. Rabbi Luban discussed very eloquently the importance of tshuva and some of the practicalities of things that we could do. And this leaves me a bit of a dilemma, because I would love very much to be able to discuss some optimism, some ways of looking to the future and finding chizuk in the resolution, or in what we could do potentially to resolve this crisis in which we live. Mitzad Sheni, there's a serious concern. It seems the Eitz Yosef points this out on the Gemara, which is brought in the Ein Yaakov, where Achashverosh takes off his ring and gives it to Haman, and Chazal say, Gedola hasoras hatabas, Yosef mimemtes neviim v'zayin nevios. And he explains, because since Achashverosh was a very fickle person, they still had hope in Hashem that things would work out. But it was only when the finality of the Tabas, where Achashverosh wouldn't be able to change his mind anymore, that's what convinced them that they have to do tshuva, and more than the Memtes Nevi'im and Memches Nevi'im and the Zayin Nevi'os. And it seems that there's a danger that sometimes the optimism, sometimes the Lashon he uses there was I think it was the yichul, the hope that they had, could pose a danger, because, I'm hoping for everything to be resolved. Everything is going to work out. This crisis is going to end soon, and we're going to be extricated from these tzoros. And sometimes that can blind us and to forget about the responsibility that we have to do tshuva. So it's a very fine balance between the realization of what's expected of us to change and to improve ourselves, and yet what we may need emotionally, psychologically, and as a schus to resolve the tragedies or the crises that we live through, and to find that balance. So it's a difficult balance to find. I hope to attempt to try to walk that tightrope. Rabbi Luban spoke about the message of recognizing that everything is min hashamayim. And the truth is, if you look at the Rambam at the beginning of Hilchos Tainis, the first halacha and the second halacha, he says very clearly, when there's a tzora on the tzibur, we have to cry out. That's the responsibility. And that sends us the message that this is a lesson from Hashem and it's not a mikveh. And he says that's miderech hatshuva, and says bizman shetov tzora ויזעקו עליהו ויוריעו, ידעו הכל שבגלל מעשיהם הרואים חורה להם, ככוסף אבנסיכם היטו, וזהו שיגרועים להוסיר הצורה מעליהם. It sounds from the Rambam that the realization that this is a message, not necessarily even to reach the level of the tshuva that's imperative to come from that message, but just the realization alone that this is a message for us. It is because of Avodah Seinu, and Hashem is sending a message. This is not a mikra, as he says later. If one thinks this is a mikra, then afani elechimoy bekeri. He says that just brings more tzoros. But that realization alone, it seems, has the power. Ligroim, his lotion is, sheyigroim lahosir hatzor me'aleim. So if we stop and realize and recognize that this is not an act of teva, this is al pi derech hateva. In fact, it's almost easy to see that this is not stam teva, what's going on over here. Say the tragedy, say the pachad, say the widespreadness all over the world, the impact that it's having on the economy and on the human social life and every aspect of our existence, of the world's existence. Anyone who thinks this is teva, wow. But it's our obligation to realize that this is not teva, that this is a message to Klal Yisrael, and that realization alone seems to have the power, ligroim, that lohosir hatzora me'aleim. So that's something I think that not only deals with the responsibility that we have to recognize and to internalize and then to attempt to improve in the process, each one according to his own understanding of Yisurim Boin Alov Yefashvish B'Ma'asav. But I think it's also a means to help that this sorrow should come to an end. And I do believe that we must focus on both. We must focus on the message to us and what we can do about it. But we also have to focus on a tone of optimism, because sometimes we become so overwhelmed with the sorrow that it becomes almost too difficult even to think in positive terms of what we can do and how we can improve ourselves and how we can change, because we're just so broken by everything that's going on. So I want to share with you for a moment just a couple of thoughts. One is a Medrash Shocher Tov, very interesting Medrash. The Medrash says, the posuk that it's speaking on is Mi bochem yirei Hashem shomea b'kol avdoi, and then at the end of the posuk is Yiftach b'shem Hashem v'yishoin belikov. So the Medrash says as follows: B'shor sheYisrael nichnosim letzora. When Klal Yisrael enters a tzora, well, we certainly the last few weeks have entered a very, very grave tzora. Heim oimrim la'Kadosh Baruch Hu ga'aloi sonu. We say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, redeem us from this tzora. This is what we need. This is what we want. This is what we crave. Please take us out from this tzora. VaHaKadosh Baruch Hu omer lahem, yesh beneichem yirei shomayim. No, do you have some yirei shomayim that can help you, that can, in their schus, that you can be redeemed from the tzora? That's what you need. Vehem oimrim, and Klal Yisrael answers a very interesting answer. L'she'ovar, b'mei Moshe, b'mei Yoshua, b'mei David, b'mei Shmuel. He says, we had in the past Yirei Shomayim. Who did they have in the past? they had in the times of Moshe, the times of Yoshua, the times of David, the times of Shmuel. Aval achshav, kol she'onu hoilchim, hi machasheches lonu v'hileches, shenemar sheholach chashechim. Says it gets darker and darker as the generation goes on. And we don't have, they're answering him, we don't have Yirei Shomayim anymore. That's a thing of the past. We had in previous kufas. Today we no longer have that. Omer lem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bitchu b'shmi, trust in my name, the Shem Hashem, the Baal HaRachamim, v'hu oimed lochem, and that will stand for you. Shenemar yiftach b'Shem Hashem, trust in the name of Hashem. V'lomo, why is that such a powerful thing? Trust in the name of Hashem. There's no Yirei Shomayim. They couldn't point to any Yirei Shemayim in this generation that could serve to be a schus, to tip the scale in their favor to end the tzorah. We're in such a matzav. No Yirei Shemayim. We have to go back to Moshe's generation, Yeshua's generation, David's generation, Shmuel's generation, and Ad Kan. And what do we do? V'loma shekol mi shebotech bishmi ani matziloi. Anyone who puts his trust in my name, in the Shem Hashem, in the Chesed Hashem, I will save him. And I think that this is something that can give us some chizuk. You know, if in the times of the Medrash, Klal Yisrael answered that they have no Yirei Shomayim, they had to go back to Moshe's door and Yeshua's door and Shmuel's door and David's door. What could we say? What could we say? We kind of feel that way. We feel so bereft of true Yirei Shomayim. We feel so unworthy to come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to ask him in the name of anything that we might deserve, that he should goal or that he should redeem us from this tzorah. But we do have something, and that's the advice that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave. He says, "Betach bishmi." Why? Shekol mi shebetach bishmi ani matziloi. Chazal are quoting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whoever trusts in my name, I will save him. And what that means is that even though I'm not worthy, because it's a generation which wasn't worthy, they couldn't point to a Yirei Shemayim in the whole generation. What must have been the rest of the generation? But yet, call me, Shabbatech Bishmi. You don't need yichus, you don't need tzidkus, you don't need pedigree, you don't need anything. Call me, Shabbatech Bishmi. No matter how far away, no matter how at loss the generation is, ani matzilo. Okay, so that's very, very, very comforting and very important, not to let it overshadow our responsibility to do tshuva and to get the message that this is a message for us to improve. Mitzad sheni, we can address it not only with the realization that it's not a mikra, which helps to remove the tzorah, but through our bitochen, we can help to remove the tzorah. The problem is, bitochen is not such an easy commodity to come by. How do we, trust Hashem that we see what's going on, it's so serious, and yes, Shem Agora Mached, and yes, we're an unworthy generation, yet it says, in a generation that couldn't point to a Yirei Shomayim, Betach Bishmi, Shekol Mi Shebetech Bishmi, Ani Matziloi. I'd like to suggest that there's an Eitzah that's found in a Sefer. It's a Pirush on Dilim for Rabbi Avrom ben Ramoch, who was Michachmei Sfarad B'Tkufas HaRishonim. And he says as follows. It's really push it to Mashmos of the Psukim. In Perek Chofei, David HaMelech says, Elikai b'cho botachti ali voisho. He says, I put my trust in you. Don't let me be embarrassed that my trust should be disappointed. Then the second pasuk says, Gam kol koivecho lo yevoishu. All those who put their hope in you should also not be embarrassed. Hope, bitochen, they seem to be both of the same ilk. So he says as follows. What does this pasuk of Gam kol koivecho come to include? It goes without saying that those that trust you, those that trust you with the ultimate shleimus will never be embarrassed from their trust. Even those that can't reach that level, to focus their hearts, to trust you with real trust, that I'm so confident in the Chesed Hashem. And he says the reason is because they're drawn after gufnius, they're drawn after their materialistic existence. I think here that would mean they're so concerned, they're so overwhelmed by the nature of this plague, by the nature of this illness, by the nature of this virus, and how rampant it is, and how contagious it is, and how overwhelming it is, that it becomes so overwhelming. I can't see myself trusting Hashem that I'm going to be extricated, that this thing will be passed and it'll be protected. But with all this, they can't have bitochen sholem, but they can hope. They refuse to give up hope. They know that there's always hope. They know that afilu cherev chodom unachas al saboroi shel odom al yimna es atzmo harachamim. That if he's not mispalel and he loses hope, he's holding back the rachamim. He's not allowing Hashem's rachamim to come, because if he's mispalel and if he shows that he still has hope and he hasn't been meyayish, and that's one nusach al yisyayish ben rachamim, then Hashem can protect him and will protect him. He says, "Ve'im kol zeh mekavim lecho lo yishir mitzorosam," and they still have hope. Afilu elu lo yevoishu mitikvosam. Even these people will not be embarrassed from their hope. Elo ta'aneim v'toishieim. You will answer them and you will save them. It clearly says, and that's Takat the Pshat, Gam kol koivecho lo yevoishu, that even those that can't find the strength to be so utterly confident in the Chesed Hashem that we're not worried about anything and everything's going to be all right and we're going to be good, our family's going to be good, and this terrible Mageifa is going to end so quickly. Even those that can't find that strength. But those that manage not to be meyayish, not to give up hope, Gam kol koivecho ta'aneim v'toishieim, you will answer them and you will save them, because at least they have mustered that minimum level of bitochen, which can make all the difference in their ability to influence the results that take place. I would like to, and just maybe to give us a means of reviewing this constantly. We say every day, 3 times a day, Hatoiv, Hashem is the good one. Ki lo ycholu rachamecha. His rachamecha is never withheld. His rachamim is always, is eternal. And he's the merachem, ki lo yisamu chasudecha, who never holds back his chesed, which means he always has rachamim, means rachamim is he sees and feels our pain. And he always does chesed. He never withholds his chesed. Me'olam kivinu loch. That's why we always manage to have hope. When we look at the past, the Goyin tells us that the Goyin learns Pshat in Mishlei and in what we say in Nishmas, Adheinu Azarunu was only Rachamecha, that you helped us. V'lo Azavunu was only Chasodecha, not because we deserved it. And Lochein, he says, Al Tidshenu, I think he learns the Al, you will not forsake us. Why? Because if what you took care of us until now was because we deserved it and not Rachamim v'Chesed, maybe we no longer deserve it. But if it was Rachamim v'Chesed, your Rachamim v'Chesed is constant. And even though logically we might say, well, maybe I'm not deserving of such Rachamim v'Chesed, but emotionally, when we look back and see all the Chesed Hashem, and see all the Rachamim of Hashem, and see it to the fullest extent, that in itself gives us the ability to emotionally feel, I know it's not going to end now. Even though logically, maybe it could end, maybe I'm not worthy as much as the previous, but the emotional, the impact of seeing the Chesed. David HaMelech says, according to the Targum Yonason, he says, Mo oshiv la'Hashem kol tag melohi oloi. Push it, the Meforshim learn, kol tag melohi, every gemul that I have is from him. He learns, no, kol the gemul that he has in his oitzer is olai. Kol tag melohi he. All of his gemul that he has, he's given to me. David HaMelech wasn't given all the chesed in the world. David HaMelech had his fair share of challenges as well. But a person can develop an appreciation for the chesed Hashem to the extent that he feels Moshiv Hashem Kol Tagmulohi Oloi. All the chesed that exists in this world, he bestowed on me. I can so appreciate and connect and feel sensitive to the chesed that Hashem has done for me that I could feel momentarily, emotionally, that he's given me all the chesed there is. There can't be any more. He's given me everything. And the Mela, that can give us the strength to find the ability to, as David HaMelech says, I trust in your chesed. I know your chesed. I know the purpose of your creation was chesed. Memela, Yogei Libi, the Goyin says that because of the bitochen that I have in your chesed, Yogei, my heart will rejoice. I know that I'll rejoice in the Yeshua. I feel batuach that the Yeshua is going to come. And that, I think, is a tool that could be helpful in achieving this. I would just like to close with one more thought, which I've shared numerous times, but I find it to be something that can be very, very uplifting and very comforting at this time. In the Haggadah of the Teisus Harit, the Teisus Harit's Haggadah is available on the Oitzer HaChochma. I don't know if it's in print anymore, but I know I did get a download of it from there. On B'tchila Oivdei Avodah Zorah Hoya V'Seinu. So the Teisus Harit asks as follows: Yom Tema, Ma Shevach Hu Zeh Shehichnis Zorah Amokim Lavidosoi LeMitzrayim, not Lavidosoi. He says Kein Tzorach LeMitzrayim. V'Achar Kach Hoitzionu. He put us in Mitzrayim and he took us out. Shkoyach. He says, Lo Yichnos Lo Yoitzi. Don't put us in. You won't have to take us out. What are we so thankful for Yitzias Mitzrayim? V'harei onu, he says, it's v'harei onu b'nei choirim. V'lomo nishabeach aloiso hitzor. Why do we thank Hashem for Yitzias Mitzrayim? V'lochein, he says, mitchila oivdei avodah zorah hoya aviseinu. He says, aviseinu, they were b'nei choirim, but they were oivdei avodah zorah. And he said, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to be goizer shibud l'tovoseinu oyo. Shal oisa hashibud chasoleinu. He put us in shibud, and he had rachmanis on us. V'hoitzionu v'hichnisonu. He took us out, and he v'hichnisonu tachas kanfei hashchina v'nosalonos hashabbos v'es ha'torah u'bonolos beis habachira l'chaper al kol ha'b'nisei. And it seems that the Tosfos Harid is explaining. He says that there was no way that as descendants of Terach, as B'nai Oivdei Avodah Zorah, that we could have been zeichet to the tuv, to the hatova, to the chesed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give Klal Yisrael. And the only way that it could be done, and that's why we thank him for taking us out of Mitzrayim, because we know that putting us there was essential to our future. He put us in Mitzrayim, v'chasalei. He had rachmanis. I look at that as like, we couldn't earn it, but we became entitled. We suffered so much. And because of our suffering, we now become entitled to gifts, to hatova, to chesed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, above and beyond anything that he could have justified to give us because of the fact that we had this background of Avodah Zorah. And I think that at a time like this, when Klal Yisrael, together with the entire world, is suffering so much, and as was mentioned before, the tragic losses that we have felt, and the tension, the families that are just exploding at the confinement, at the quarantine, at their social distancing outside, but inside there's no distance. They're all together, and they're just so much suffering. And the people who are alone for this story, how many people whose spouses, couples that didn't have their children over, spouse was in the hospital and they're alone in the house for the story for 3 days, Yontif, Shabbos. So much is going on. And if we think that sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts us through challenges and difficulties and pain to be able to, through Rachamim, entitle us to get Hatova and Chesed and benefit that otherwise we couldn't have earned, that might help us to cope with this a little bit better and to be able to be a little bit more optimistic about the future. There's no question that we must get the message. If we don't get the message, if we think that this is a mikra, afani elech imochem bekeri, all we do is extend this tragedy further and further. And once we get the message, we must see in our own lives what we can improve and what we can rectify. And we can't let the optimism, the bitochen, the tikva, the kivui, the hope, or the realization that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a plan to be mezake us beyond what we could imagine. We can't let that interfere with the choivas hayoim, which is to get the message and to improve. Mitzad sheni, we should be uplifted by the ability to hope to Hashem and the ability to realize that Hashem, the Darkei Hashem, are so nistorim. And Kol Mad Ovid Rahman Litav Ovid, and even when we can't see it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a plan, just as He had in Mitzrayim, to be able to be mezakeh us above and beyond anything we ever could have earned or deserved. And when we take these two together, we can find the strength to improve and the strength to connect with Hashem, which is really the ultimate of tshuva, returning to Hashem, one who is a Bal Bitochen. Rabbi Simcha writes in the Meshech Chochmah that the Mekoyer and the Torah for Bitochen Hashem is Ubay Sidbok, is clinging to Hashem. The Bitochen connects us to Hashem. The Yisurim waken us and tell us that Hashem wants us to come close to Him again and to remove all the barriers. The Rebbeinu Shalom should help, that we should be able to get all of the messages, that those that have suffered tragic losses should be able to find nechama in such difficult situations, and sometimes loss without anyone even being there, without a proper levaya, without the extent, the expanse of the tragedy is sometimes overwhelming itself. And they should find the choma, and those that are sick should have a refuah shleima mamish bikorov. The Rebbeinu Shalom should show the chut hachesed should be moishech on all those that are sick, and should protect all of Klal Yisrael from any further tsar and illness and tension and aggravation in this trying situation. And may we be zeicher to see the go'aloi sonu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will redeem us from this terrible tzora, and to be zeicher bekorov to the geula shleima b'mheira b'yomim.
Thank you so much to the Rosh Yeshiva for their inspiring words of Chizuk. Thank you to Rabbi Avram Luban for organizing this behind the scenes. And we'd like to thank Torah Anytime for streaming this to many people, in addition to the over 700 people who tuned in. And the Mirza Shem should be a schus for Rabbi Chaim Aryezev, Ben Edel, and all the other Cholim and Klal Yisrael. And for anyone who's interested, there will be a shir tomorrow night at 9:30 by Rabbi Luban on Zoom on the Machlokas, Rosh and Rambam, and when to get married if you are learning, Kedushin Daf Chavtes. The Zoom ID is 903-059-2675. If anyone would like a recording of this shir, send an email to shiurim@ytcte.org, and we will send it to you. Again, the Zoom ID for Rabbi Luban shir tomorrow is 903-059-2675 at 9:30 p.m. Thank you so much. Good night.